So we've talked a little bit about deities that are no longer popular, and we looked at two kinds of categories. We looked at the iconic and we looked at the non-iconic. Now, the non-iconic is fairly easy to understand, but the iconic is a little bit more difficult, and it has more deities in it. We talked a little bit about the most common deities, the Amogapasha, the Achala, the Kasarpana, as examples that we really don't find in the actually we don't find them now, and we haven't found them really for the last 400 or 500 years. They were very popular from the 8th, 9th century up until the 14th, early 15th century. But there are other deities and groups and different ways to classify deities that are no longer popular. And one way of looking at the different deities of Vajrayana Buddhism is to divide them into, according to the Sarma system, the new Tantra system that came in approximately the 11th century. We have the Sarma system, which presented 4 levels of tantric literature, 4 levels of tantric texts, sort of a basic to advanced. Now, with that, we have the Kriya, the Charya, the Yoga, and then the Anuttara Yoga, the fourth, the highest yoga. Now, the third of these, the third category, the Yoga Tantra. Yoga Tantra does not have that many texts in it. It has really the Tattva Samgraha, the Vajrashikara, Paramadhya, the Sarvadurgati Parishodhana, and then depending on what religious tradition you follow, be it Sakya or Kagyu or Gelug or Jonang, then you would place the Manjushri Namasangiti either in yoga or in Anuttara Yoga, or you would have it in both, and you would have an explanation why it's in both. So there's not that many texts actually in this category of Yoga Tantra. And there's really not that many deities. What we have is we have Vairochana as the main deity. We have Vajrasattva. We have a little bit of Vajrapani, not much. And then we have the Manjushri in the disputed Tantra. Namasangiti, is it yoga or is it Anuttara Yoga? And the Sarvadurgati is essentially a compendium of mandalas. It has many different mandalas within it. The Tattva Samgraha and Vajrashikara have fewer tantras, but they do have tantras. And the tantras can generally be large in size, meaning that you have a central figure with many, many secondary figures. So they're very complex mandalas, and then very complex rituals. And it's also been said that within the ritual practices of the Yoga Tantra, they have the most number of hand gestures. I believe with the Sarvadurgati Parishodhana, there's at least 100 different hand gestures that need to be performed, and if you're a ritualist, then they have to be memorized. So we have this entire category of Tantra out of the 4 categories, and it has not been popular really since the 15th century. We can say mid to late 15th century, that's fine, but even then it was really only in painting where we would find it, and it would be in scroll works, but especially in murals. And we would find these murals at monasteries such as Shalu, Gyantse, Sakya, Jampalakang and Mustang, Alchi, and then monasteries that are really predominantly in Western Tibet. That's where the Yoga Tantras were popular. And then in Tsang province and in central Tibet, they were popular with the Sakya branch schools, Jonang, Bodong, Ngor. But even then, they began to fall out of favor. The only practices that are really commonly seen now within those narrow confined traditions is really the Sarva Durgati Parishodhana, which is quite popular for funerary rituals, for funerals. Now, the rest of the practices are basically non-existent. We don't find really a large amount of sculpture or scrollwork painting or murals really after the 15th century for almost any of the deities that we find in the Yoga Tantras. So, when it comes to deities that are no longer popular, we can say that the entire class of Yoga Tantra in Vajrayana Buddhism of Tibet and the Himalayan regions, the entire class of Yoga Tantra is no longer really popular.